people do have an unhealthy relationship with money. They're afraid of it. They're afraid to talk about it. They think it's bad social manners. It's culturally taboo to talk about money. It is a sign of self-importance for some people. It's a fear of rejection for others, where if I say a number bigger than I think, then they're going to say no, and I can't handle the rejections because it's going to crush my soul. Yeah, so I'm excited to have this conversation with you. You and I have spoken on Clubhouse, and we've also spoken on Zoom a couple of times. And I think that what you do really fascinates me. And I have to admit, Marshall, I really don't fully understand the concept. So I think it's going to be a treat for everyone who's listening or watching this video to be able to understand a little bit about the power of your voice and the journey that you've been on. So maybe before we continue too far, for people who don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of story about how you got here?
Oh, man. My name is Marshall Davis Jones. I'm a world bridger. And that term came to me by some weird accident, but it was the best way to describe what I wanted to do in the world. And that is connect one thing to something else and be in the middle somehow. And that started with spoken word. So I was a competitive poet in the slam poetry community. And it requires you to have a way with words, but also to be able to bridge ideas powerfully to strangers very quickly, who will rate you right now from 1 to 10 based on how they feel. And I learned a lot about how to read a room by making a lot of mistakes in communicating, about how important it is to not necessarily just stand on your own opinion because that's what you believe to be true, but to really tap into what others believe and understand and what they value. And mastering words was like a thing, like how do you put words together? And I became really good at it and very formidable in that arena, most likely because of my history in battle rap. But one day I had a friend of mine get on stage and he goes, tell them about the blood leaching demons and things like that. But what stood out to me was, one, blood leaching demons, like we need to talk, like what's going on in your life. But two, the tone that he was using to convey his words. I was like, I know you and I know that you don't sound like that. What is that? But I also knew that for some reason, that was what was captivating everyone. And when he won at the end of the night, I said, bro, what's this? He was like, I'm in acting school, which I knew. He said the very first thing that they train before they teach any other techniques is voice, because the voice is life. And that became a germ. And that germ has led me here.
How long ago was this?
That was April 2011. What was it? What would they call it? They called it the Grand Slam Finals. So basically it's like, if you're a poet, it's like right before you go to the main event. It's like the AFC championship kind of thing. And yeah, man. So everybody competes and it's the creme de la creme. And so it brings in a lot of energy. The New Eurekan Poets Cafe is a place that the bricks in those walls are covered in stories. And you can feel that in that room. And then when you bring all of the poets that are drawn to like the finals, it's just a lot of like electricity. So you really got to bring it. And so it was a great night and it changed everything.
You said a lot of things that I'm interested in and I want to follow up with, but I'd like to ask you a question that if you're uncomfortable, like, let's not do this. But you said that you used to do battle rap, slam poetry. Yeah. And the way that I envision in my mind is poets write words and they internalize them. So it's part of them. Is it possible for you to recite a piece of poetry or to give us an example of some of the things you might have done in the things that you've referenced?
Oh, man. So, yeah. So I have a poem I can do. Introducing the new Apple I, person complete with multi-touch. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Compatible with your iPod and your iPad. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? No friends. There's an app for that. No life. There's an app for that. You're a complete We're working on it. Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? Doesn't it feel good to touch? My world has become so digital, I've forgotten what that feels like. It was difficult to connect when friends formed cliques. Now it's even more difficult to connect now that cliques form friends. But who am I to judge? I face Facebook more than books face me, hoping to book face-to-faces. I update my status, 420 spaces to prove I'm still breathing. Failure to do this daily means my whole web-wide world will forget that I exist. But with 5,000 friends online and only 5 I can count in real life, why wouldn't I spend more time in a world where there were more people that like me? Wouldn't you? So that's an excerpt from a poem I actually wrote in 2008 called Touchscreen. And this was at the boom of, I was sitting in front of my computer and I had MySpace and Facebook and there was 5 other competing social media platforms that were trying to be supreme. And my brain just scattered and disintegrated into a few pieces. And I was like, I can't even fathom this right now. And then I go outside and I just wrote this piece to speak to what I thought was happening. And that particular poem wound up taking me a few places. will.i.am asked me to perform for his Transform conference, multiple technology conferences. In fact, someone snuck into my ear that it made its way all the way to Apple headquarters, as something that they played in a meeting. And I was like, oh, I mean, my address is here for the royalty check, but it was interesting to speak to the world. But what resonated at that time was that everyone in the world was feeling the same way and tapping into that. And it seems that people feel that way now. But yeah, man, you
flowed into it so quickly and you gave us the explanation and the backstory to it. But I wanted to give you a moment to just acknowledge how cool that was. I love the wordplay. There's some memorable hooks that you dropped in there, how friends create cliques and then cliques create friends. And there's some other ones there that I'd be embarrassed to try to recite, but I just love that. That was pretty awesome. I can only imagine you on a stage in a darkened room with a spotlight and mic, a room full of people just listening in and probably clapping and just experiencing that. You're doing it here grounded on a sitting down with a microphone, but the energy, the electricity that you spoke about, I can visualize that at least in my mind. Just question about writing. What is the process like for you to come up with something like that? And then how long does it take for you to then make it a part of your whole breathing, speaking, so that it feels so natural to you?
And when I was a kid, I used to play with Legos, and they were substitutions for the toys that I didn't get for Christmas. And Legos and the idea of Legos has really shaped a lot of my thinking about how to stack ideas and play with them and break them and then put them back together. And so it depends on what it is. So when I'm a hired writer for a company that says, oh, we want you to talk about procurement. For example, SAP was we want to talk about procurement. And there's this all right, well, what are the Lego bricks to procurement? And then how can I put those Lego bricks together in a way where by the time I'm done, I have, something that is memorable. And so, line for line for line. And as far as the embodiment is concerned, something about slam and the competition of slam, what I loved about that art form is that it forces you to have a heightened state of arousal because you're competing. You're competing and that other people want what you want. And that's the feelings. You want emotion. And what I had to learn when I first started slam, I was very, I used to pop lock and move around a lot. And there was sort of this indication that I was overexpressing And I wanted people to kind of feel and see everything. And it wasn't until I started doing the work on the voice that there was like this gravity. It was about having sort of like a controlled explosion, if you will, where it's like you have this energy, but the audience gets to watch it and go, whoa, versus like a Tesla coil in your living room. And that can be a lot. And so, you know, the embodiment piece was something that came later. It didn't start there. It was like, oh, you know, pure raw energy telling me. Now it's like, well, here are my bricks. And I have a certain level of control over them now because I know what I can do. I know how to stretch things. I know how to speak within context and environments. And, you know, that has now become, you know, by osmosis, poems that if you go on YouTube right now, you'll find about 4 different versions of the piece I just shared. And each of those versions will represent a different place that I was in this journey that I'm on. So there's one where it's like, yeah, beep, 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 beep. It's like, whoa. And it was cool at the time. You know, it was exciting. It was fun. So I guess there's 2 ways to answer this question. The first is getting it into the body and making the words dance will help, because it does. And usually a heightened performance like that, it does become like this choreographed dance, if you will. And then if you can settle in the body, it's sort of like the dancer who has spent so much time dancing that they are able to have grace, and then it just falls into the body naturally.
Is it one of these things that once you internalize it, you don't ever forget it? You could recite it at any given moment?
Yeah. You start to lean into what the psychologists are starting to recognize as embodied cognition, which is the understanding that the brain isn't just like up in our heads, but that the body is a representation of the mind as well. And usually for like even like actors, it's like they usually want to get a cold read. At least that some people have that mentality to get the logic of the words just stuck in there, and then they can play with it with their bodies. I have a different approach where it's like the body gets involved almost immediately, and it helps because it encodes things.
If somebody is listening to this and they're familiar with slam poetry or battle rap and say to themselves, all right, that's a very impressive skill set that you have. Your ability to manipulate words, to control your tone of voice, and to embody these words and ideas in your physical self. Mm-hmm. And they say, I can't do that. I want to be able to start to peel this back a little bit and to be able to give our audience something that they could try so that they can start to take steps towards where somebody like yourself is at. You said earlier that voice is life, and you talked about voice work. So maybe we just need to step back a little bit and just give people an understanding of what does that mean? Like, what is voice work? If I've never heard that term before, or understand that there's ways that we can use our voice for different impact and to different affect. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
A lot of times you'll hear someone say something like, I don't like how you said that to me. And then the person will respond, what are you talking about? What do you mean? It's like, it's the way you say it. You said that. And it's this elusive kind of assessment or judgment that comes where you're like, well, this is just the way I talk, and deal with it or whatever have you. Most of the time when people think about voice work, they'll say, oh, they think about pitch. Like, there's guys want their voice to be deeper. And in fact, I'm going to send you audio so that you can hear where my voice was when it started. Cause I sounded like I sounded prepubescent. It's actually quite embarrassing, but you need to be able to compare and contrast so that people aren't under the impression that this is puberty. It is not. Like, I was 26 years old when I started this situation and well past it. But anyway, tone or timbre is the quality of a sound, and that is detected instantly. Your voice makes an impression on someone in 1/10 of a second. That's the same amount of time that timbre of music makes an impression. There's a book by Zachary Waller, or Walker, if I'm saying his name, but it's called Nothing But Noise, and it's about timbre and music. And he talks about voice very briefly. But that very small fraction of a second, you ever like dial when you're listening to the radio? For those who ever turn dials on radios, I'm aging myself, but we used to turn in a car. Like we used to listen to an actual radio, and we had to allow ourselves to turn to different stations. And you can tell, like you're switching stations at split, and you're deciding in that split moment whether or not you're going to stay at that station or not. People make those kind of tonal decisions all the time, and your voice is giving away that data like that. So when I say voice work, what is the appropriate tone for the context of the discussion that you are having right now? A lot of people are brilliant and they have amazing content. And this is actually where I want to lean into Clubhouse. And when I first came into your room, in the Future room, you were speaking. And I remember instantly being like, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm listening. And then you told this really beautiful story. And I had no idea who you were, but I remembered the gravitas. I remembered how exceptional the delivery of your story was. I'm like, this guy, whatever he does it well, and he does it at a masterful level. And then the affect of your tone I cannot forget it. I was attempting to figure out how I wanted to describe it, but you have like a surgical warmth. That's the best way that I could describe it. It's like very precise and to the point, but it's warm. It's like the neurosurgeon that really cares about opening up the person's brain, and they're not just cold and looking at it like, okay, this is a person, but I still have to open them up and I still have to do this procedure, but I'm still dealing with the person. And that affect is what people will remember. Your voice and the tone of your voice is what will indicate two things for people after. What reminds them of you and what they remember about you. There's neuroscience that supports all of this, where, and Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you said it. And there's neuroscience to support that. Like in certain memory tasks, they can remember if you said words in a sad way, they will remember that you said them in a sad way more than they will actually remember the word itself. Same thing with any other tone. And we are drawn to tonal decision making. For example, I go to a restaurant. You go to the waiter or the waitress and you say, what's good food on this menu? And they'll point out this dish, like, oh, this is one of our popular ones. But then they'll say something like this, well, but this right here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that. Why? Because in their tone, I was able to ascertain that experience was so enriching for them. I want that. And when we're speaking to people are making decisions about whether or not they want to sound like us. Would I want to have the experience in my life that would make me sound like that? So you take someone who has a problem where they're like really agitated, like, I just, and then you come in and you're like, well, I have a solution for you. But that's the feeling that they're carrying. They actually don't want it. They actually want something else. They want a different tone, a different texture. And if you're like, I see where you're coming from, and you have a tone that is calmer, that's smoother around the edges, and they're like, I want that. I want to feel like that. I test this with my nieces and nephews, when I go visit them. They have a moment where they're upset. And because I understand that children are aware of tone at 4 months old. By the time we acquire language, we've already spent an additional 12 months just understanding tone. Kids don't get the words, but they understand tone at least 4 months and sometimes even sooner. And so if I want to get through to my nieces and nephews when they have a tantrum, I get to their level and I know that I'm using a tone that is counter to the one that they're whining with. Because if I give them that, or if I give them this, because I'm agitated, all that's going to do is exacerbate the situation. But if I come in a tone that is calming, and now I'm in control here, it's very interesting how fast. It's amazing how fast certain things just dissipate because we're speaking in a tonal language. So to answer the question about what is voice work is that it is understanding how to modulate your tone to be assertive, to de-escalate, to move things along, to slow things down, to speed things up. All of that information is in your tone. I'll give you another example. I was on a call and it was like this, and it was a 15-minute call. And the gentleman gets on and he's like, I have it's 15 minutes and we're here and, I want to make sure I can be in this call and so on and so on. And, let's just talk about what we're going to talk about. And so, we're going in and he asked me, so tell me something about voice I wouldn't know. And I said, well, I can hear the urgency in your voice because the time is limited. I can tell that you're already running to the next thing. And I understand that you're trying to be as mindful of our time, and I appreciate that. And he took a moment to sit back because it was like, oh, wow. He didn't recognize that his voice was betraying his mind. Where you are and where you're going, that can be heard. That's when we can tell when people are with us. We can tell when someone is off somewhere else in the distance while we're having a conversation with them. Their tone will betray where they are, where they're going and where they are. And, so you want to be able to create a space. That's what people mean when they say want to have a, safe space. It's tonal. If I'm trying to de-escalate, if I'm having a problem or an argument with a spouse, or if I'm, and I have a tone that's very agitated and it's pretty much like, I don't care what you have to say. I'm graded. It's sharp. It's pointed. That tone says we have a problem here. And so voice work is being able to masterfully move and control the nervous systems of the people who are within earshot of you.
You had said something that on that sales call where the person seemed to be speaking faster, or that call, not a sales call, where they were speaking faster and that betrayed their mind. Is it betraying their mind or is it reflecting their mind? Because I think people speak fast because they think I have a short period of time. They're thinking about their next thing. And they're also, like you were saying, they're mindful that you have a 15-minute window and you got to get out as much information as possible. So they're rushing. Because I feel that sometimes, especially those people who are not super self-aware of their tone of voice and how they're communicating with people, that it clearly says what they're really thinking versus what the words that they're using. Like if somebody says, I love you, but they say it in a way that isn't reflective of how they truly feel inside, the people who are paying attention will pick up on that right away. Mm-hmm. You gave the example of the waiter or waitress where they go through like, here's what's popular. Probably what they were told to say. They might even be pushing the special of the day because there might be an incentive for them to do that.
Yep.
But when they turn to you, kind of like an aside, but between you and me, so the tone already changes. Mm-hmm. It feels like they're letting you in on a secret or something they don't tell other people. My personal favorite is this other thing, and not enough people know about it. Mm-hmm. And then you said that's when they have you and you're in. But they can also be using that consciously to manipulate you to think this is what is, things that most people don't know about. And it's a real insider secret. So it could be used in a lot of different ways. One, it could be used to manipulate. Mm-hmm. It could be used unintentionally to really communicate what it is that you feel inside. Or you're just totally unaware and you're just doing what you do. lots of different ways to do this. So as a person who's trained in this stuff, who's super hyper conscious and aware of it, how can you tell if someone's being genuine, or can you, when they're using their voice in ways to communicate certain ideas?
There is a saying, and that's a brilliant question, because it's the moral dilemma. You know, they said if you can feign sincerity, right? And it's true, because that is the smallest unit of vocal communication. So there's like there's like these stages of amplification, right? Like your tone amplifies your silence, and then your voice amplifies your tone in that order. And then your words amplify your voice. So when you're able to get to the core, is what makes a great salesman a great salesman. When they say the sign of a great salesman is when they can sell anything. And it was always like, well, why is that? It's because they're like magical. It's like, no, it's because they understand what it means to be completely infused with the belief that the product that I have in my hand is the best thing ever. It doesn't matter what they touch. It matters that in their possession, like when they say, sell me the pen, in my possession, this pen becomes valuable. You might give it to somebody else. I'm like, it's just a pen. So the thing that I find interesting is that this kind of control is like giving loaded guns to people. And sometimes a loaded gun is used to protect someone. And sometimes a loaded gun is used to bring harm that was undue. And so it's always this weird, like I'm pretty like about where and when I train people, because I recognize like, oh my God, you can like really like get by if you understand that. Because most people think that content, which has been promoted, that content is king. Well, the king on the chessboard is powerful, but then there's the queen. And so maybe tone is queen, but when she moves the board and she moves people. And so when you have mastery over that, that's what makes a great storyteller, because technically storytellers have to suspend the reality that you're currently living in right now in exchange for a different one, and one that is believable, and one that takes you from this place and transports you to another place. And so storytelling is, in the business world is, I guess you could say, well-intentioned deceit, because this isn't real yet. It's not real. It's not true. But I'm going to give you a vision of the world that I believe could be. And I want all of you to get behind me. And that's where you have like the Theranos lady, right? Who was known for her voice. The people be like, oh, her voice there was something about her voice. And you see where that led people, or anyone that has great charisma that has led people astray. Usually they have these qualities about them that people were drawn to. And so you have to become mindful of who you allow yourself to be drawn to in that regard.
The Theranos lady, let's bring that up, because she got a lot of money from a lot of people and bought into a vision that was completely like, it went against physics. Like it didn't make sense to anybody. Mm-hmm. And when I watch her TED Talk and then the ensuing documentary films about her voice sounds very fake to me. It almost seems like it is an affect that she's applying very consciously. And I wonder why people didn't pick up on that, or maybe you have a different perspective. Can you break some of that down?
You know how certain magic tricks don't work anymore? Like how someone can't sell you like a bottle and with water in it and say, this is super nitro juice. Like no one can do that anymore, right? Because we all figured that one out and we got it. So you can't pull that one over us. I think every generation there is this thing that will go until it doesn't anymore. When Elizabeth Holmes was doing her rounds, she was something exotic to observe. It was like, whoa, here's his voice and like, here's his idea. And, you know, deeper voices are associated with a certain level of confidence and assuredness. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. Once you find out on the other end of it, oh man, I got. There are people who are magicians who watch other magicians and know exactly how they did the trick. So for someone like you who does this for a living, you're like, really? You guys fell for this crap? But all of those spectators that enjoyed being entertained, there were so many anecdotes about people being drawn to her voice, which let me know that was doing something. But the documentary comes out, and I don't really think people have leaned in too much into the idea that she had an affect that she was putting on and kind of opening that up. It's almost like that last place where the magicians don't want everyone else to know that, you know, there's these things that you can change or manipulate to draw people's attention. And if you're doing it for a short period of time, like for, you know, an investment call where you only have to put that on for an hour at most, 2 hours, you're not living with it, then you don't really have to pay attention to it. It's exotic for the moment. But she wouldn't be able to do that twice. Now people will listen to her with a more fine ear. In fact, I believe that Clubhouse started to filter for that as well. All of these social audio apps began to filter, but even still, people were getting scammed on the app. Why? Because for as long as humans have existed, honesty and deceit have been polar ends of what is required. There are animals that survive and thrive off of lying, giving a different perception of something, and then in exchange for the folly of whoever gets caught, they eat. And then there's other animals that thrive on, look, let me show you exactly what I am. I'm a lion, let me roar, here I am, right? And we will always deal with those ebbs and flows. And so I don't think there will be a day where you'll be like, no one will ever be able to pull the wool over my eyes or the eyes of humanity. We'll get more keen, we'll get more fine. But there will always be new tricks and new puzzles to solve. And I think part of us, we have to be predisposed to kind of wanting it. Otherwise, imagine a world where we just looked at everything and was like, that's crap, that's BS. We wouldn't go to the movies anymore because we would be like, that's not even true. So I think that there's some part of us that wants to be lied to for entertainment purposes, as long as we willingly pay, $8.50,
Right. I think we want to be lied to in more ways than just in entertainment. And my belief is that not knowing is a scary thing. And we don't have the time to understand everything that is in our lives. And so we readily make up stories. So we lie to ourselves. That's the first lie. And then we accept the lies that others tell us from government, from religion, from society. We accept all these lies, and it just because it makes us feel a little bit safer. So those who are able to tell a better story tend to be more effective liars. I'm using that word kind of loosely here, everybody. I'm not saying everybody's intending to lie, but we tell each other stories all the time. We told ourselves a story about how the sun revolved around the earth and the earth was the center of the universe, or how the earth is flat. And we want to believe in these stories because it makes us feel safe. So when it gets to storytelling, you reference Clubhouse a couple of times here. What makes for a great story from a voice point of view? Because you talked about it intellectually. I'd love to have some examples from you so that we can make it super tangible.
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
You can tell us a story in a couple of different ways, or to tell us what you're doing while you're doing it.
Okay.
So that we can understand, like, oh, that's what's happening.
Okay. So here's the thing. I think that in this particular segment, it'll be better if you do this. So, Chris, I want you to think about the last great meal that you had where you were like, man, this was awesome. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So you have that image in your mind. Now I want you to share something that within reason that you're okay with that has been challenging in the last month. But I want you to think about this wonderful meal as you share this story.
Oh, this is a tricky one. Marcia, you got me spinning around here because my brain is juxtaposing two different concepts and emotions. Let me focus on finding a challenge. Let me think about that first. The tables have turned, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'll be super vulnerable and real with you. I'll just tell you, because I was trying to look for another story that didn't involve such a personal thing, but I'll tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the story, but I'm going to think about the savory meal, right? Okay. One of the most difficult things I have that I'm trying to work out is learning how to be on the same wavelength as my wife. I think we secretly jockey for control. And so when one of us concedes, it's perfectly harmonious. And when we have opposing ideas of control, what it might look like, that's where the tension starts to bubble up. And I have to learn how to understand, to be able to control my reaction and my tone in situations like that, so it doesn't drive my wife into a place where she's questioning herself and her own opinions. That's a real challenge.
Well, one, I appreciate that. You know, that's honest, right? It is vulnerable. And it's challenging because now because the juxtaposition is coming. So, and then we can discuss what we're doing. I want you to think about the most disgusting, gross thing. You don't want to touch it. You don't want it near you. You don't want none of it. And I don't want you to tell this story because I don't want you to sully how you just told it. But I want you to examine how your body feels right now, thinking about that.
So you want me to tell you how my body feels just thinking about that thought?
Mm-hmm.
I could taste it in my mouth, almost like my saliva tastes different. I feel like my skin is crawling a little bit thinking about this thing. And I want to stay clear, like 6 feet away from this thing. And it's super creepy. So just whenever I see it is a creature. So when I see one of these insects crawling around the house, I want to grab a tool or something and get rid of it as fast as possible.
There you go. Now, the reason why, and let's just go back to that other mindset, just to wash that image. So what's happening? The imagery, the part of the brain that looks at parasites and crosstalks, it's not directly like 100% connected to every node, but it crosstalks to the place where we make moral judgment. The word in Spanish, when you like something, it's me gusta, which comes from the Latin gustar, which means to taste, which also lends itself to the English word gestation, which is what we eat. We say things like, oh, that left a bad taste in my mouth, or we sweeten the deal. Now, a lot of times when we think about flavor and taste, we think about putting things in our mouths, but the nose plays a huge role in flavor perception. You know, anyone who lost their sense of smell also probably felt how boring life could be. So what happens when you don't want to touch something? You don't want to look at it. You don't want it near you. The body starts to do all sorts of things to protect you. It shuts off the pathways to your airways, so you breathe a lot more conservatively. It creates a certain muscular tension to prepare you to sort of make your body a destroyer. It's like, I need to get rid of this problem. And all of that, imagine if you would have applied that energy to the story you just told me. It would have had a whole different affect, because your mind would be associating the problem with this thing that you don't want to look at and you don't want near you. The body is always doing its best job to keep us alive. In our thinking, and this is where I'd like to invite a Venn diagram of imagination, where the middle of that Venn diagram is the word is, right? Like, when you know, this is that. I think about this wonderful meal that I had, and I think about my wife, and I think about the conflicts that we have, and I think these are the things that I could do to draw closer to this image that I have in my mind, because I want to be closer to the image that I have in my mind. I don't want to run away from it. I don't want to avoid it. I want to be right here. But if I don't want to be with this image that's in my mind, my tone is going to betray how I feel about the thing. And so when we use the imagination, which has been proven, fMRI scans, we can imagine this auditory imagery. There's, imagery in the nasal area. You can imagine certain smells. That's not like just like, oh, it's in your head. It's like, no, you can conjure up these images and they have an effect on how you're perceiving things. And we Venn diagram all the time. It's the reason why two people can look at the same thing and have totally different polarizing views, vanilla or chocolate. You'll get into a fight. Like, no, vanilla's better. No, chocolate's better. What are you talking about? Vanilla's... And nothing's changed about chocolate and vanilla besides whether or not your ice cream has melted because you're too busy arguing about it. But the view and the point of view is embodied. So one of the things I like to work on, and, very quickly, is in a module. I just call it good food. But you can use good food really to do anything. It's not just about food. We use the word taste to describe whether we like something or not. Taste in music, taste in food, taste in clothing. So there's a strong connection between that system. In fact, there was a small study in the 60s. I've done a lot of weird research and found all these, there's one paper that came out and they just didn't. But there were these doctors that they had hookups to this gentleman's esophagus. And they noticed that when they said things that were displeasing, that the esophagus would spasm. And they were like, nah, I don't know. So they were kind of playing this game of walking by and just saying stuff that would just suck around this person, and the esophagus would spasm. So there's this connection to the desire to eat. Even when people are emotional, what's one of the first things they stop doing? They stop eating. So there's a connection between, or people that also, when they're emotional, they eat a lot, right? To get certain things. So there's this connection between how we feel and what we choose to ingest or choose to reject. And so this is a very straightforward way to, within one context, it's like the menu. I like that meal there. That was a really good experience. Versus, I wouldn't eat that, wouldn't eat that. My tone is saying, I wouldn't put it near me. You shouldn't either, right? Or I'll have what he's having, right? There's that scene from that film where I'm trying to remember, but the young lady's having a great time at the other table, and the person goes, yeah, whatever that is, give it to me.
Right. It's like When Harry Met Sally.
Absolutely. Right. What was your feeling though? You know, 'cause I know that we spoke to it, but I'm curious we saw how it felt on one end when you spoke about just describing the feelings. But when you spoke about it the first time, what did you notice for yourself?
About which part?
When you were telling the story the first time.
About my wife?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's very hard to hold two opposing thoughts.
Mm.
You told me to capture in my mind the last great meal and think about that and whatever it did for you from a food, savory senses, and then to talk about something that's an ongoing thing that my wife and I struggle with.
Mm.
So that's a point of frustration. Of course, she thinks, well, I'm an idiot. I can't get it. And I think she's an idiot. She can't get it. So we're going to have to just work through this for the rest of our lives, I think. Mm. And so it's hard to hold two opposing thoughts.
Absolutely.
So I was trying to continually think about that savory meal while I'm describing this thing. And I saw that it affected the way that I chose the words that I chose. Like I realized I would not use this word normally, but I was like bubbling up. So that's like a cooking visual thing, right? Mm. Like I imagine a pot boiling or something. Mm. And so holding one thought changes holding a feeling from a different experience and translating it to a story to tell changed the story and changed the way I thought about it.
What if I were to suggest to you that we most of the time are holding layers of thinking? That every conversation is like in Photoshop. You have layers, and depending on what you overlay or blend determines the overall output of the final image. Sometimes what becomes challenging for us is if we're used to a certain image overlay. Let's say we have 3 layers to a picture, and that third layer usually is that. It's like, and then someone says, no, take this image and put that there. And it's like, whoa, I'm used to this image being there. That's the image. That's the context with which I'm used to describing or talking about this thing. When we shift the image, it's a shift of context. And that can be a bit jarring when we have repetitions with a certain conversational dialogue. It's like you train a lot of people to get over the fear of asking for money, because the context with which when it gets to the ask part, how much will this cost? The image that they have that's stuck is, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be asking. It may be too much. They may not have it. And all of those contexts, they come to you because they trust you, because they've seen it. You've broken that context 50 ways to Sunday, and you have no fear. And they want to be able to put that image in that spot. So when they use the words, it cost X, there isn't a sign of shirking. There isn't a sign of fear. There isn't a sign of resistance or reluctance. And sometimes it takes a little while to break that context. You know, if it was just watch one of my videos and everything would change, they wouldn't keep coming back. But it takes its time. It takes its time to cook the new context and bake it into your experience. And so, yes, that feeling was like, whoa. However, even noticing any subtle change in difference is enough to go, wait a minute. What's that? Maybe I can lean into that more. And then it becomes just repetition, like everything else that we've done and everything else that you've done.
Marshall, can you make it real tangible? Because now you're entering into a space where I think there's going to be a lot of interest here, where people do have an unhealthy relationship with money. They're afraid of it. They're afraid to talk about it. They think it's bad social manners. It's culturally taboo to talk about money. It is a sign of self-importance for some people. It's a fear of rejection for others, where if I say a number bigger than I think, then they're going to say no, and I can't handle the rejections because it's going to crush my soul. So if I'm imagining a taste, it's probably not a good taste. It's probably not a good physical reaction, a memory or an emotion they're holding in.
Mm-hmm.
So can you make it real tangible? And you're right. Obviously, I've talked about it so many different ways, but it takes multiple exposures to a concept for someone to really to embody and to be able to do on their own. So maybe we can add to that repertoire of tools by giving them something to do or think about so that the money conversation isn't as uncomfortable as it might be for them today.
There's something in neuroscience called affordances. And affordances is the fancy word for anything that you can do with your hands. So it's anything. If I have a glass of water on the table, an affordance is that I can reach for it, grab it, and drink it. I can do that. If my wallet is on the table, if my keys are hanging up, my affordances are I can grab those keys. I can move them. I can remove them and put them in my pocket. I can afford to do that. When you're in a store for an expensive object, the affordance is I have to be able to exchange a certain amount of money to be able to touch it. If I buy it, I can touch it. So, what is the affordance? How can you feel that you can afford the experience of receiving the funds? That's actually the wrong way to look at it. The way that we're looking at it is that you have this thing in your possession. The word sale actually comes from reluctant. When someone sells something, they're not eager to give it up. They're not in a rush. They actually really want it, but they're willing to give it to you for a price. It's a different perspective. Like, I want my time, actually. Because what I'm giving up in exchange for your money is time control. I will be beholden to whatever it is that you are asking of me. And I actually want that. I want to hold it. The curiosity is whether or not they can afford to have that from you. There's two things that we can look at here when it comes to lean into the food metaphor here. McDonald's is selling you a burger for $2. So it's excitement and neon and bing, 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 bang, 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 ba, bang, buy. And they're just getting people rolling in and out. If you go to some place like a Caviar Roost or something, it's a very expensive restaurant. It's a dining experience where there's a certain understanding that what has been prepared well, and that in order to have this experience, you're going to have to pay for it. So we look at the Venn diagram perspective and lean into it. If you know for a fact that what it is that you have, and then in your body, you know what it takes for you to prepare it, what it takes for you to plate it, to put it down, what it takes for you to design it, what it takes for you to map it out. You're very well aware of this experience. And you are offering it to the other person. I want everyone to take a moment really quickly to do this exercise. I want you to just gently extend your hand as if you are just offering someone something that, they can take or not. I want you to feel what that feels like. Here's this object, this item that you are unveiling, that you are showing, and it is in your hand. And I want you to feel it. I want you to feel in this item, it's like the person can take it or not. But if they do, there's a price. And I want you to lean into what that feels like. What does that feel like? Alternatively, take that hand back. Now, I want you to put your hand out. But in your mind's eye, I want you to feel like that person needs to take it. What does that feel like? I'm not even trying to change my affect at all, but just this gesture, like I need you to take this from me, changes my whole being. It makes it sound like I'm pushing the item on the person. It makes it feel like, why am I so eager to get rid of this thing? It must not be valuable if you're willing to get rid of it so easily. Your time must not be so valuable if you're willing to get rid of it so easily. This is an embodied feeling. When we give of ourselves, when we offer ourselves over, when we open our hand, what is the intent? Because that will shape the tone with which it is heard from the other person. When you are there, like, you can have this or you won't. It's okay. I'll put it right back in my pocket because I'd rather it stay with me. And that thing that we're talking about, here's our time. Here's my time, energy, and effort. And I would prefer it stay with me and my family and the people I care about. I'd rather watch Netflix. I'd rather play video game. I'd rather do something else. But for a fee, I'm willing to let you have this. And it's no longer about your affordances, it's about theirs. Same thing with a very expensive meal. Think about how it's brought to you at a nice restaurant, how things are laid down, how things are put down versus how a bag is handed to you at Chick-fil-A. Here you go. Boom. Thank you for your $14. Keep it moving. Now, if you can do that at scale because you have a product that's an impulse buy, fine. Well, most of the clients that I'm imagining that you're talking to and the people that listen to you are people who want to have long relationships with the people that they're working with. And $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 relationships are usually a little longer. Then thanks, here you go. Take your bag. And so it becomes an embodiment practice of how you value the physical form that you bring. Because it's not the final product is a product of your physicality. It's not just the final product. Most people who are very proud of what they've made, like of a chef or a sculptor or a designer that knows what they're doing and then understands like the typography, understands like why they put this weighted thing here. In the essence of feeling like, this is, if you value it, that becomes apparent immediately when you try to exchange it. When you talk about something, think about a thing or an object that you have that is your most prized possession. In fact, if you want to try this exercise of imagining it, right? Think about something you would never give away, something that is unsellable. You're like, I wouldn't, not a day. Think about what it means to you. Think how it feels to talk about it, to remember it. Because your body, the embodiment, your affordances, the way that you would touch it, the way that you would hold it, right? Or something that's of value, you should let them see it, like a baseball card or something like that. You're like, this is a Michael Jordan rookie card from whatever. The way you would want people to handle it, like this is precious cargo. When we are able to handle our offerings with that same fragility, that same value, and when I say fragility, I don't mean, because people might mistake me for that saying like, you be fragile. It's like, no, you treat your time and you treat your energy like it is fragile. You treat your relationships like they're fragile. When people don't care, they just bust through your house, kick things over, just whatever. We're just making space. And when you do that, the people, they feel that and they don't like it. Unless you're playing football. Then you just knock them all over the place. But when you're exchanging meaningfully the embodiment of how something is treated, it's not separate from what's happening up here. So that would be my suggestion. And I think to the point is that something you do very well. You're like, this is valuable and I know it's valuable. And, you know, if you want it, you can have it for this fee. And if you don't, that's fine. I know other people that you can probably go to if I'm not the one for you. And that comes across every single time I watch you examine someone who wants to like learn how to close, or they figure out what the It's the same energy. People say, oh, know your worth. And that becomes very abstract and ethereal when you leave it in the brain to abstract. But when you think about what you're going to do with your hands and with your body and your physical form, and you're like, if I valued this vessel, how would I handle things? Then it's no longer abstract and in your mind, but now it's in your body. And then it's everything that you touch. The way that you put your mark on it will be clear.
I like that approach. It's a different one than the one that I try and help people with. So it's adding some ammunition to the arsenal of things that I can use to help people. So your approach seems to be very much physical, psychological, and feeling based. So once you're able to associate a positive feeling or experience, and you talk a lot about hands and body, then you can see it in a different light. Perhaps the body will tell the mind how to think and how to speak and the words to choose. So I quite like that. That was really cool. Thank you. When you say to think about something that's not sellable, what comes to your mind when you say, like, I have something I would never sell to anybody?
Okay. And this is going to be, I guess, a bit on the ethereal side, because from very young, I've had to learn how to let go of things I valued for life circumstantial reasons. And so, you know, I don't have a tangible item that I can say, you know what, this does not qualify. But if I were to give it a moment, you know, it's the place where, you know, I don't know what people mean when they say they sell their soul. But I think I've gotten to a place where I recognize that isn't for sale. And it's intangible, which I don't like, because there's a part of my mind that always wants to be rooted in, you know. Because to be fair, Chris, I don't have many physical possessions where I'm like, oh, you know, no heirlooms.
Right.
The only things that I have that are fragile is I've collected a lot of trust from people. Like, people talk to me about things and they tell me things. And I have a lot of stories in here. People that felt like my ear was the ear to hear a thing. And I think it's part of my, you know, personality base, and probably what makes this work for me is in that the fragility of relationships. Those are the things that I, you know, it's like people. Like, I won't trade one relationship for another. Like, they're like, oh, you know, which makes navigating business very interesting, because you have all of these different vectors and angles, and people are willing to betray others all the time to get to the coins. So that would be the thing, which is, I guess it's not brick and mortar, but I know what it is.
The reason why I asked you that question is because I think I netted out the same place where you do. I have things, but things are just that, they're replaceable. And I'm not an overly sentimental person. Like you said, you don't have any heirlooms or something that's not replaceable. Because I even think about pictures of my children, but they're digital, so they exist somewhere if I needed to pull them down. It's the kind of world that we live in. I think it goes to this whole trend that we live in a increasingly dematerialized culture where we pay more for less physical things. We pay for experiences. And the iPhone is a perfect example of like how many different devices and physical things it's replaced. From the map books that we used to carry in our car. You're old enough to know.
Yes.
Like, that was the way you could navigate Los Angeles. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. To the camera, to an appointment book, just so many different things, a daily planner. And so it is increasingly becoming more difficult to come up with a physical thing that you can hold in your mind and hold in your imagination as something. But it was curious how you answer that question. I want to be mindful of time.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed this conversation with you. Are there any other high level thoughts that you wanted to share with us before I tap into your brain about how people can dig deeper into what it is that you do and how you and your offerings?
So there was one thing, a tangible, and it goes back to the hands. So there's this thing called square breathing, box breathing, where, you breathe 4 times, inhale, hold, exhale, then keep the air out of your body. Used by the military to basically fall asleep in a war zone, and basically put the body in a state where it could rest despite. I want to bring attention to the hands here. So when we take over our breathing, when we, what's the word? When we're breathing normally or without thought, there's a different system that's operating that breathing. The second we take control of our breathing, which happens when we mindfully breathe and also when we speak, the respiratory system goes into a different track in the brain to the body. When this is activated, the hands get involved. And so what I want, and you can do this with me, Chris. So we're going to do a segment of box breathing, but we're going to do it this way. So when you inhale, I want you to gently open your fingers on the 4 count, right? And then we're going to hold the fingers open, just gently, nothing massive, for that 4 seconds. And then as you exhale, slowly close the fingers. And then when the air is out of the body, keep the fingers closed. And then we're going to do that 2 more times. So it's going to be 4 counts. So 3, 2, 1. Inhale, opening your fingers slowly. 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath. 5, 4, 3, 2. Exhale slowly, closing the hands. 2, 3, 4. Keep the fingers closed, air out of the body. 2, 3, 4, 5. Slowly inhale, opening the fingers. 4, 5. Hold the fingers open. Hold the breath. 2, 3, 4. Slowly close the fingers, exhaling. 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath, fingers closed. 2, 3, 4. One more time, slowly opening the hands. 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Closing the fingers, exhaling. Hold the breath. And release your hands. "25% of the motor strip of the brain is devoted to our hands. So 25% of what the body is going to do, 25% of what the body will do, how it will move, the hands get a lot of that space. I want to invite everyone that's listening to practice this breathing. When you recalibrate your breathing, to synchronize it with the hands. A lot of times people get very nervous when the first things that, things start shaking, but the hands start getting busy too. People get sweaty palms, all sorts of things. So when you bring that synchronicity or synchrony to the hands and the breath, it just takes that mindful breathing thing to like one more level where you're not just thinking about it, but you're embodying the opening and closing of the hands as it relates to the breath cycle. I recommend you do that every 90 minutes, along with a nice yawn stretch, like what you see your dogs and cats do. If you have a dog or a cat at home or whatever, when you see them do it, you do it. But yeah, bring that awareness, especially if you're going to be using your hands to do all of that amazing work that you're going to be doing. You want to be in sync with them and become one with them and get after it.
What is that doing for us? The yawn stretch and the box breathing with the hands.
So yawn stretching or pendiculation, it resets the nervous system. So when we sit in front of our computers, it's the equivalent of sitting with our car on and the headlights on still. And we just sit there. And what happens after a while is that the car battery will go out and you'll need a jump. So the yawn stretch is the body's way of getting that jump. You notice that all the animals do it. The birds do it. The dogs do it. Hippos do it. Bears do it. And what they're doing is all of the muscles that they use to be mobile, to get after it. They twist their necks. They do all of that good stuff to turn all of those muscles back online to say, I'm here. We usually do this first thing in the morning, but then someone told us that yawning was rude in the third grade, and that ruined us for the rest of our lives.
It's true.
The body needs that kind of adjustment roughly every 90 minutes. Most people don't do it at that interval. But if you have a pet and you're like, how often does your cat or dog do it? They're like, oh, they do that a bunch of times a day. And then my next question is, well, have you ever seen them go to the gym? Like, no. But when they're ready to go, are they? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, nature has a built-in system. I'm not saying don't go to the gym and meet your fitness goals. What I'm saying is that nature has a way of keeping itself alive. And one of those ways is to make sure that your body is online and ready to go. So that's yawn stretching. The box breathing is resetting the respiratory system. The way that we normally think about breathing is inhale, exhale, but there's actually a pause in there. And infants, they do this where they inhale, hold the breath a little bit, exhale, hold the breath. And when you have small children, you think, oh my God, my baby, they're not awake. It's like, no, they're fine. They're just breathing normally. And inhale, exhale is a sign of respiratory distress. So what you're doing by resetting to the box breathing is you're resetting the pause in the breath cycle. But then when you synchronize it with the hands, you're creating a full embodied sensation that, okay, I'm here and I'm breathing. When I go on long distance runs, I use that method of breathing and synchronizing my inhalation, exhalation with my hands as I'm running, and I'm able to run very far and not be as exhausted as I would, or as I used to be when I would run distance. So there's a strong connection to that sense of embodiment in the whole body breathing with you. And so those two things, every 90 minutes, get to it.
Is it called box breathing because instead of going on 2 dimension, it goes on 4? There's inhale, hold, exhale, hold.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a little bit uncomfortable, I have to admit, because the exhale and hold, you're like, I need oxygen. But after a little while, you're like, no, I'm okay. I have enough.
Yes. And that's the body getting okay with, because usually when people gasp, that need for air. But if you're able to let's, if we were to go back to the original thesis here, it's like, I'm in no rush to get more air in my body. It'll come. It's okay. Just like I'm in no rush for you to put this cash in my hand right now. Like, it's okay. Like, I can always breathe over here. If we can't do this together, I can always just turn over here and take a breath, right? And it becomes that in sync, right? That everything that you're doing, by the time you get to what's the euphemism? They're like, oh, it's like breathing for you. Once it becomes so natural, that's the synonym. Oh, he does it like he's breathing. And so there you are.
It's wonderful talking to you today. If people want to dig deeper, do some voice work, and they're turned on by this physicality, this embodiment that you've been talking about, how do they find out more about you and where can they go?
All right now. So mindbodyspeak.com, MINDBODY, speak, SPEAK.com. And, you can get a before and after and hit me in the inbox.
Where can they find you on social?
Marshall Davis Jones on Instagram, Marshall Davis Jones on LinkedIn, and those two things. I would need your course direction on like massive omnipresence on all of these channels, Chris, because you got it on. You're here, you're there, you're everywhere.
The illusion of being everywhere at the same time, forever and always. Yeah. And are you still participating in any kind of audio spaces now?
I go to Clubhouse every now and again. I mean, I got over the dojo part of it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, okay. It is interesting because you do, when people are really, really going and there's like a cacophony, it's like, whoa, it becomes more about survival of the fittest at that point. And it was more about keeping my nervous system calm and recognizing just how powerful it is, how powerful the nervous system interactions can be in a room. You're like, okay, there's a bunch of people upset in here. And your body is sampling all of that. As soon as you hear it, you're sampling that information, and that can be overwhelming in and of itself. So yeah, I'll go in and hear a room, hear people talking, but whatever the mystique or the all of that it was, and that has come and is gone. Yeah, I think it would require everyone being inside again to really ramp up. It spoke to the need that we have to feel the vibration of the other. And that's what Clubhouse really tapped into, is like, I need to feel something that feels like it's right now. And they did a good job of that. What about you?
Yeah. Less and less. I spend some time on LinkedIn audio spaces and also on Twitter spaces as well. Less and less on Clubhouse. Very rarely now do I open it up, where it used to be a multiple times a day habit, just checking on rooms. And I think the mystique, the lure of having these great conversations with people have gone, because it's been replaced by marketers and drama rooms. And I'm not signing up for that.
Absolutely. What I would love to catch you on your LinkedIn audio spaces. I didn't realize that was a thing. So
yeah, I'll definitely look into it. They're scheduled and I don't do them that often. I mean, back in the Clubhouse days, I'd do like 4 calls a week, maybe more. Now I'll do a call every couple of weeks, but I may be like you and not so intentionally, but I found myself doing a ton of these audio calls in terms of like, oh, there's a story and there's a voice and people seem to resonate with what it is that I'm doing. And it was a unique experience where we don't have to mind what we look like, or what we're wearing. All we have to do is focus on the word, the tone, and the pitch, and the quality of the sound of our voice, and that's all we have to focus in on. It gave me it allowed me to focus more, and I think that was a good thing for me.
To that end, it's interesting because I think it's like a metaphor. There's a metaphor in there somewhere about when we didn't have to worry about what we looked like. There was something truer to the essence, less noisy. And what if we were able to, I hate that you have 7 minutes or less, because you just opened up like these thought patterns of like, we get up, we get dressed. And maybe we get up and we get dressed and we look nice because we don't want to have to think about what we look like. Like if you can put on a nice outfit, you don't have to wonder like, man, is this the thing to wear today? But when you're not so focused on that, what information, what are you able to focus on? What are you able to communicate? What are you able to get to? And why does that feel so good? And maybe that's what they mean by the whole like dissolving the ego. And it's like when it's just the essence of you without a care of what you look like, doesn't mean that you let yourself go, but it means that you put yourself in the optimum place where you don't have to think about how you look. Somebody points out a stain on your shirt. You ever notice that? You point at a stain on someone's shirt, they're like, all of a sudden now there's like this corporeal, oh my God, I'm dirty. But if you're like, yeah, I already know my outfit's fly. Like, let's talk about the thing here. So that would be an advertisement for, or a reason to dress well and to get people like, hey, you want to look great in these shoes because then you don't have to worry about if you're wearing horrible shoes. It's like you wore Jordans, you already knew automatically when you went to school, you had on the Jordans. Like there was no question, there was no contest. These are the Jordans. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So in a world where we have eyes, ears, nose, and a mouth, if you can get rid of the things you don't need to worry about, allow you to focus on what really matters, which is what do you have to say, how you want to move about the world, and how you move people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
All right. Well, Marshall, it was a pleasure talking to you. And I appreciate your time. And I hope everyone that's watching or listening to this finds value in that, and they dig deeper into your content. I think mindbodyspeak.com, right? Mm-hmm. Is that correct? You are mindbodyspeak.com is the perfect URL for what it is that you do. I can't believe you got that, but it's perfect. It says everything. It's super easy to remember too, because everything that we've been doing, all the exercises, your stories are about your mind, your body, and how you use your voice and how you communicate with the world. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.